that
Darian,
is working
you're
with
going to
us
need to take
on
off
these
your video.
interviews. So, Chris, I hope it's okay with you if we record this
Yeah,
as it's
that's fine.
strictly our committee.
Absolutely.
Darian, your sound is breaking up, so you might want to. Sorry.
Yeah, um, hi, Chris. I'm afraid I'll
Hi.
have to get off the pic.
Okay.
My Zoom has not been very stable. I like to think I'm more stable than it is.
Yeah, that's the century we live in, right? With all the technology, we're at its mercy.
Yeah, we certainly are. Okay. Well, I think we're ready to start, but I don't see the recording going yet, Ellen.
It is recording.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it asked if I agreed, and I think we're good to go. Recording up in the top right there.
Okay, great. Oh, I see. Yes. So, good morning, Chris. For me, it's 10 o'clock in the
Oh,
morning,
okay. Wow.
even after even after 10 o'clock, but for me, that's early. So I'm not at my
Yeah, I
best at
bet.
this hour. But
No,
in
no,
any,
not at all.
in, yeah, I'm Darian DeLu. I'm the president of WILPF, and I'm very glad to welcome you to this interview this morning. I'm here in Sacramento, California, and I want
Great.
to introduce you to Ellen Thomas. She's been on our national board, is the chair of our Disarm Issue Committee. Ellen, do you want to say hello?
Hey, Chris.
Hi, Ellen.
Ellen is in the East Coast, uh, in the middle of where all the hurricanes were, which is part of why this process has been pretty slow. In any
Right.
case, thank you very much for your application, and thank you for
Yeah,
being available for this interview. We are
absolutely.
sorry for all the delay, and we appreciate that you have stayed with us here.
Yeah,
This has been a
absolutely.
busy time
Absolutely.
for Will. Yep, with all that's been going on. We are
Right.
predominantly a volunteer operated organization. And I wanted to give you a little bit of information about the position. And of course, you'll learn more as we talk, and you're welcome. There will be a chance for you to ask questions.
Great.
The eNews editor works with our IT person in preparing the necessary components of the eNews. So the editor edits and does just very standard word processing. It's the IT person who formats the actual electronic things.
Great.
We do have no issue in the month of January. So there's a gap for that 1 month. And frequently there's a 1 month gap in the summer, but otherwise it's a monthly issue.
Mm-hmm.
We do expect our contractors and our WILF members to communicate with each other in, of course, a mutually respectful and appropriate way. However, we do know from past experience that a few of our members do that. I would say that we ask whoever our editor is or any of our contractors to alert us if any situation like that arises. We'll intervene.
Okay.
We try to be sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
So Ellen and I will take turns asking questions, and I get the first
Sure.
turn. As an editor, what do you like most about that work, and what do you like least?
Good questions. I would say that what I like the most is I like contributing to assisting others in developing their voice and their messaging and kind of streamlining it and you know being able to execute a certain amount of flow with that. So I really enjoy helping others kind of claim their voice in their communications. Uh, least, hmm, I I guess, although it's not, I wouldn't call it it's something I don't really like. But I think one of the challenges, I work a lot with writers from different uh, 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 first language situations, primarily Arabic and Turkish, um, and the cultures of communication can be a bit different. Going from not just from one language to another, but from one region to another. Again, I wouldn't call that something that I don't like, but it's definitely a challenge. If anything, I think it's something that I appreciate kind of working through and communicating through and everything. So those are the two things I think. Things that I like and things that I find more challenging, but I like a good challenge.
That must be interesting with the different languages.
Yeah. Again, these are great, great writers, great English speakers and writers. It's just there can be, slight differences just in the history and the culture of communication. And I like to make sure that there's just a consistency with the department and with the voice of the publication, just to make sure that it's not all over the place and that everyone's on the same page, as it were. So it's a challenge, but I enjoy it.
Thank you.
So I'm taking the next question. We hope that you will edit for clarity and structure in the articles. And what other kinds of things do you look for in terms of editing?
Um, Okay. I'm a bit of a, I guess, kind of a nerd on this. So I study a lot. I've actually done coursework on SEO. I mean, that's not necessarily something that you guys are primarily focused on, but as we go further and further into the 21st century, you know, and actually, as the technology is developing, the same strength of structure for SEO is the same strength of structure for just reader engagement. Those lines are converging every week, it seems. So yeah, I'm do a lot of studying and kind of take a certain amount of pride in executing a good amount of reader engagement and making sure that I'm helping to contribute to the author's ability or the journalist's ability to make that direct contact. And also, I'm communicating why it's important and why both the reader and Google are hoping that we do communicate so directly and efficiently and everything. So I like being able to communicate and help to make sure that the message is pretty direct and the engagement is pretty direct.
Could you define SDO for me? I'm sorry.
SEO, search.
SEO is search engine optimization. So how in terms of a Google search, how likely is the article going to populate some kind of search?
I see.
It's basically, in addition to a user, kind of looking for the article on the website themselves, Google's going to populate these articles based on keywords and really, again, more and more based on just the direct communication. So it's one and the same. What the reader's looking for and what Google is looking for are becoming the same strengths.
I, I'm not surprised that there are workshops on that, but I guess I am. It's moving along.
And again, those are the same thing in terms of engagement. So as opposed to just thinking about the kind of blandness of Google, it's important to just think about the reader. And every single year, there's more and more content being published online. So that I think I've read two different studies. One is 4.5 million, and one is 7 million new pages published worldwide each day. So as there's more and more competition for a reader's attention, it just demands that we're all communicating as directly and as efficiently as possible, while maintaining the journalist's voice, while maintaining the very specific voice that the author has and everything. So I think that's one of the things that I'm doing really every day, is working with authors and making sure that they're streamlining and getting their direct execution and communication while I'm maintaining their particular voice.
That's a tightrope.
It is, and then add to it the different cultures. Yeah, it can be quite a tightrope, but that's my job. So there you go.
When you have an article that has good potential content, but unfortunately is so lacking in writing quality, clarity, correct usage, whatever, to be uneditable, how would you work with such a writer? And we do have such writers.
It's interesting. I've given workshops on this kind of engagement, reader engagement, and usually I'm showing some numbers as to how this good communication can lower bounce rates and lengthen engagement rates and everything. And I mean, that's sort of the technical aspect of it, but usually when I tell people that that's what Google is looking for as well, as opposed to Chris just saying something. In other words, once the industry standard of what is capturing attention, is it's understood that frankly, a lot of times what writers and authors, journalists will think about is their own voice. And what I try to communicate, and I think I do an effective job of communicating, is that's only half of the message, that it's really if and how well it's received by the reader. If we're writing things and we're putting them out there and people don't have the time or the patience to go through them and they're not hitting their mark, then it's pointless. So once I, just remind them of the requirement of that relationship, not only to state what they have to say, but to also make sure that they're engaging, and that second part of the equation is crucial for what they're trying to do. Once that's communicated, I think everyone understands, and once they know that I'm there to help with that. I'm not being antagonistic. I'm really trying to create that bridge between them and the reader.
Do you make suggestions for changes in language or ask questions for clarification, or
Certain times I do. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you're
One of the
dealing with some older people, older folks that still harken back to, the 60s and 70s and so forth. And so when you're talking about the internet, it's good to educate people, but don't expect them to understand what you're talking about. And so I'm just wondering how you would do that.
um again, let me try to think of an example. Um one of the things that'll come up often, which grammatically really doesn't make the difference one way or the other, but in terms of reader engagement, again, I think that's crucial. Forget about the internet for a second. We're really trying to get the reader to read it, and in this hyper competitive time, people are simply there are a lot of choices. So I'm sure no matter what generation these writers and these journalists are coming from, their goal is to have their work and their work read and to have it processed and to have it retained. An example would be, and this is super technical, but I'll give it as an example, is grammatically speaking, it might be, and by the way, this applies to a lot of things, including like grant writing. And there are actually programs that will determine whether or not indirect subject placement that's used, and sometimes indirect subject placement will determine whether or not you get the grant or whether or not you don't get the grant. And we're talking about money in that instance. The same thing applies to readers who don't have a lot of time. So indirect subject placement would be something like, in order to further children's rights, comma, the Acme organization was formed. Grammatically, that's fine, but the way you want to write it, particularly to start paragraphs or to start essays, is in order to, or the Acme organization was formed in order to further children's rights. So grammatically, those sentences are both fine, but again, you want to make sure, particularly, and again, this comes a lot culturally with the Turkish language structures and the Arabic language structures. A lot of times it's more polite to be indirect, but whether it's grant writing or whether it's reaching an audience in the journalist setting, you really want to state your case right away. You don't want to beat around the bush, and the numbers show that. You know, the readers are engaged more, particularly if you're starting paragraphs, and certainly when you're starting the articles themselves. If you're doing direct engagement, not indirect engagement. That's a technical thing, but those are the kinds of examples. Again, they're trying to reach the reader, and I can help them do that.
Thanks.
That's interesting. You're next, Ellen.
I am. Oh, okay. I thought I just did. Okay. We'd like more of our members to write for our eNews. We realize, of course, that you don't know our members, yet we wonder how would you cultivate or encourage writers, given the means that we have available for this work. Those tools and methods include contacts with our committee chairs. There are a number of issue committees in WILPF. The editor will have those contact email addresses. And with branches, how many branches are there, Darian?
It's always a flexible number, but probably between 30 and 40.
And you can contact all of the branch, the person in charge of each of the branches by the branch's listserv, but they are the ones that then would reach out to others. And by reaching out to prior writers of branch news items, plus possibly emails, telephone calls, and texts. So, what was the question in there?
I guess how would I
How
orchestrate
would you
that and
reach?
go about that?
Yeah, how would you cultivate or encourage writers, given emails, telephone calls, and texts?
Well, I
And
would want to, kind of gauge the landscape, right? At first. So I think, for the first couple of months, just kind of, again, it's a, they're involved. This is involved with the contacts and everything. I would want to kind of gauge exactly what information is there. Start to reach out and introduce myself. I guess get the scope of who has written before and made submissions before, who's still involved and who might want to do so again to kind of rekindle their interest in doing so, or maybe reignite it if they had run into issues before, kind of discern what those issues were and see if I can't smooth those out or take care of those, or if with the new sheriff in town, if some of those things aren't able to be kind of rectified. Yeah, I would just want to gain, and also in addition to talking to those, I guess those contacts, as well as those who've made submissions before, just kind of listen and see what their suggestions are. Maybe they have new affiliates or new members who they think would be good contributors, would help to make that introduction. And then I could kind of go further and see if they have ideas on what they want to contribute, maybe help them flesh that out even, Again, I would have to really take a look at the landscape, but it sounds most like it's about a kind of relationship building with who's kind of in charge of these different chapters and kind of where it's been before, and kind of just gauge exactly what's going on, get a good understanding of it, and just kind of continue to build those relationships and kind of get people interested and excited about contributing again or for the first time.
yes, relationship building seems like a really important way to start or to continue. In your work, and it sounds like your work has been extensive, when you've been asked to edit something that conflicts with your own opinions or views, how did you handle that?
I don't think I've ever been I don't think I've ever had to work. Usually, so my background comes initially from kind of nonprofit in terms of this work. I mean, I've been publishing and editing, since I was young, but but in terms of kind of re-engaging it, the last 15 years, it's really been through the nonprofit sector. Um, it's only been over the last several years that I've branched out into commercial clients. So the reason why I mentioned those two things is when I'm working in the nonprofit or NGO field, I'm usually working in a kind of purposeful collaboration. So I'm working with, kind of like-minded people, like-minded organizations, and very rarely is there something that is just, egregious where we're not able to kind of sift through, maybe kind of the minutia of certain differences of opinion or whatever. And then when I'm working in the commercial landscape, yeah, again, you know, primarily that's been in culture, in travel, and in tech. And usually those subjects are so dry by comparison that, yeah, I haven't really run into any problems. I think in the same way as relationship building, I think just, creating the confidence of communication. If there were ever anything so egregious, first of all, like you guys, had mentioned, if there were something in terms of a relationship or the way communication is going, I would certainly want to field that with you and gauge your opinions and how I should proceed. Uh, but I've got no issue with kind of stating my case and claim. I mean, I'm not particularly confrontational with that kind of thing. Again, I haven't ever really run into that, but I can certainly imagine that I would rely on the relationship and the communication with you guys to help me kind of navigate anything that would be seemingly insurmountable.
Thank you. Ellen?
Okay. Have you encountered any difficult authors or bosses in the past? And how did that feel to you? How did you handle that? I think you just answered that, didn't you? Or no?
Yeah, authors or not really authors. When I was working with the tech group, I mean, sometimes just technically, a couple times I would have to go to Dubai where their primary office was, and they would all just work, like just cramped in a little two-room office, and that was personally not my thing, but I could do it for a bit of time and then kind of go back to the hotel and continue there. So that's pretty technical. I think, I come from prior to, like I said, or during my nonprofit, much of which was pro bono communication support. I was also doing event planning for the nonprofit sphere, and perhaps those pressures would be, as opposed to the kind of the editing world and journalism and working with the publishers and the agencies, more in the event world where there are specific deadlines. There were perhaps some tensions there, but again, there's usually a team working on things, and a lot of times that would actually come from patrons themselves and everything, anger and everything. I mean, I'm also pretty good at being diplomatic with it. I spent a lot of time. I went to NYU. I spent a lot of years in New York, but although I'm from the Midwest, so I was able to kind of navigate a lot of those tensions and be the one that people relied on to sort of navigate any of that. So I can imagine having I, I don't think I've run into that many problems, and when and if I have, I've been the one that kind of wear the hat of diffusing them. Again, I'm sure communicating with you would be, with both of you, would be additional strengthening of any of those needs. But I'm pretty good at going about it myself, and I'm pretty diplomatic and not particularly confrontational. I think people are okay. People don't find me very threatening. I think that's a good place to start.
I'll just mention that your work with events sounds like it had some pretty interesting, exciting parts.
Well, in 2018, we did two with President Biden, one big one for a venue that I was working with, 3,000 person public event. But we also did a small room. We did at the JCCSF. He did a book signing event that January, and the theater was 500 people, but I managed it. They brought me in to manage the VIP room, the meet and greet beforehand. So that was smaller. That was about 60 or 70 people doing just photo ops with the then vice president. So yeah, that was my old life. But again, I was always writing and publishing and contributing those communication efforts to the nonprofit sphere. I was kind of doing both. But then it was after 2019. In 2000, this is actually kind of timely as well. It's not a part of your questioning, but I think it's an important in the current context. In 2019, I was actually in the West Bank for 3 months. I was in Hebron, Palestine, and actually I'm in touch with friends and colleagues that I met at that time in the current climate and the current situation. So it was that experience then in Jerusalem and Bethlehem and in Hebron where I got the idea of kind of expanding to the commercial contracts. And then when COVID hit, I did all the arrangement to kind of help fortify that and kind of set it loose, cut it loose. So that was very deliberate to kind of branch more from the events to the communication sphere. Although I was doing both for many years, but yeah, I guess I bring some of that experience of some of those deadlines and tensions from that realm. They come over here, and then, like I said, add to that a little bit of New York City, and yeah, it's I'm able to kind of weather a lot of storms, I
That sounds like it'll be valuable in the current times, one way or another.
guess.
Where are you,
As you know,
Chris? Where are you?
So I'm currently in Budva, Montenegro.
do you live there?
I'm without residence right now. So I was in Istanbul for 2 years after COVID, after I did the arrangement of my consulting business. After COVID, I took off and I joined actually Mohaned, who I had met in Hebron, who was the director of one of the peace projects I was working with. I joined him and the former communications manager, joined them in Hebron. I'm sorry, in Istanbul, and had residency there for a couple years until last year. And then I've been splitting time between, this area of the Balkans and back in the U.S. a couple times. I'll likely be going back to the U.S. at the end of the year for another project that will be coming up, another contract project. But yeah, I've sort of been homeless the last. I mean, basically back and forth between Montenegro and Belgrade, which are right next. Serbia and Montenegro are right next to each other. So it's like going from New York to Connecticut, I guess.
Uh, Mail and banking and so forth available in the US?
Yeah, I do that
Uh,
all the time. So I have both deposit systems. I work with a couple of deposit systems or have my, or supply my, yeah, I do. I work all the time with either direct deposits or utilizing, deposit agencies.
okay, I hadn't even ever heard of deposit agencies, but
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's the framework for it, but yeah, there's a group that I work with called Rule that's based in Estonia, and the agency I work with out of Istanbul, which also does the markets in Dubai as well. They funnel through Rule, but there are also other, TransferWise and Wise and different kinds of deposit mechanisms. But the Telecom Review, the tech publisher in Dubai, they just have my routing number and my account number, and they just deposit directly into the account.
Uh, I feel embarrassed now complaining about time zones because you must be calling in at, I'm trying to think where it would be early evening your time.
It's 7:30. It's not late at all.
Okay. Well, as you certainly know, WILPF is an activist peace and justice organization. Our news stories frequently relate to these issues. And it's tricky, but important to recognize if an article is inconsistent with WILPF principles. What is
Hmm.
your experience or background in peace and justice activism and movements? You mentioned that you worked with PDF, but I guess the question would be how sensitive
That cut out there. I wasn't
do
able
you
to
think
hear
you
it.
would be able to be? Thank you for telling me. How sensitive do you think you'd be able to be from your background in detecting that, oh, this isn't exactly a normal peace and justice perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure all will claim the same, but I think that I have a particular sense of certainly kind of an overt, mission of what organizations are all about, including, like you say, Peace Development Fund. Um, I can get a sense of that and align with that pretty quickly, and I guess most importantly have the kind of understanding of the nuance of language to be probably one of the most kind of attuned and sensitive in the room. I would think I would probably be, yeah, like seeing potential red flags as early as anyone, and I, again, I'm pretty communicative, so yeah, I can imagine that both the combination of my experience working, and Peace Development Fund is, as sounds like you might know of them to a degree. I think they were formed not 110 years ago, but 40 plus years ago in the very early 1980s. So they've been around a time and have their reputation and their their history. So yeah, it's pretty easy for me to kind of absorb that, and I wouldn't be involved with these organizations or interested in this relationship with you guys to if it weren't for a similar kind of alignment of not only the history, what you currently engage with, but also what fits that and how best to go about helping to facilitate. Yeah, I feel I guess maybe working with language for so many years, I feel particularly sensitive to what's appropriate, what's fitting, what is part of the agenda and the mission.
Thank you. Ellen,
So
your
do
turn.
you think there's anything you feel is important to an editor that we didn't ask you? And if
Um,
anything else that that's a general question, but specifically to WILPF US also, you probably have some questions.
um, my questions always tend to be pretty technical, and you guys covered it already. Well, first of all, let me go back to editing and responsibilities. This probably is something that you kind of take as a given, but I think working with the IT professional, but utilizing all of the specific necessary platforms to kind of streamline this and kind of get this, going, in a time effective, efficient way. I mean, clearly, I have the experience and the tools that I need to be able to kind of expedite this stuff quickly. I would want to get an idea of the schedule, and I certainly, the article not, or the eNews not coming out in January, that gives me some idea of that in terms of an annual schedule, but and summer as well, but also kind of the monthly schedule, kind of how that works out. I would want to get that idea, but in terms of having the knowledge of the necessary tools, obviously that's in place. I was able to look at the history of the organization. I guess one of the things that I could add to that is I don't know. Maybe working with Peace Development Fund, and you guys had talked about the kind of different generations of contributors. I actually have an interest in that. Like I have a strong desire to kind of help sort of bridge messaging generationally to make sure that we today, and that any kind of content publication today is drawing from lessons and from work that has been contributed in the past. Um, so yeah, the particular um, mission of WILPF and being able to kind of carry and facilitate that messaging into today is something that I'm particularly interested in. It's not just about Instagram posts and TikTok and all the latest. I really think that perhaps something that gets lost in all of that is that continuum and is that bridge to those very important voices from the past. Yeah, I think it's a kind of side desire for me of mine to help contribute into making sure that we're still hearing those voices.
May I ask you what you meant about Instagram and TikTok? A lot gets lost in that. Could you clarify that for me?
Yeah, I think we're of a particular kind of cultural space where maybe there is a little too much value placed on the new and the speedy and the current and the influencers and the latest apps and the latest platforms, and it's all new, and I think that really the strength of a society comes from the melding and the conjoining of different voices, different generations, uh, uh, those whether they be the most current or great voices from the past. Just making sure that we're all drawing from each other and not just looking immediately for the most flashiest and the loudest and maybe unfortunately most quickly forgotten. So again, I think. Yeah, I think in a particular cultural time frame where we're kind of really into the bling and the most kind of kind of loudest perhaps and most flashy input, I think it's important to underscore the strong voices from our past as well.
So have you had a chance to look at the eNews on the current WILPF US website? We're in the process of developing a new website, but it will also have a place for eNews. But have you had a chance to look at that at all?
Yeah, I went back through the last maybe 4 months, 4 or 5. I mean, there was the summer, which was the kind of joint. It was a July, August, but yeah, I went back. I think through May, including the current October eNews
Do you have any
edition. So yeah,
comments that you'd like to make on it?
well, so yeah, a couple things. First of all, technically, yeah, it's completely manageable. It's something that's that's familiar, and that I particularly if there's an IT person that I can work directly with. Yeah, it's very familiar and very manageable. And yeah, it's in terms of adding to that flow of that particular kind of paragraph introductory, click here, introductions to what these particular articles and coverage is about. Yeah, I mean, I'm competitive. I think I can do a good job at helping to make something good flow even that much better.
I'll just mention that not making heavy judgments, but my guess is that you, like Ellen and me, are not an electronic native. So we are dealing with interesting times with these pretty huge cultural transitions. Also, I'll
Right.
just say you touched my heart by using the word conjoining, because my email address is conjoin at,
Ah,
it's not a word that everyone appreciates, but I
yeah,
love the meaning of it.
yeah, that's great.
But back to questions. uh,
I'll say that was intuitive, but we'll chalk it up to just good luck on that one.
yeah, that would be pretty remarkable intuition.
Yeah.
We hope to have a
Well,
long.
even checking my spam folder a couple days ago, that was, I'm not one of those, you know, uh, spooky kind of guys. But even that all of a sudden that, I better check my spam. I haven't checked that in a while, and that was just the right timing. So yeah, even that. So yeah, a couple of good ones on this one.
You're in the flow.
There you
So we're definitely hoping for a long-term editor. Uh, is that likely to mesh with your situation?
Absolutely. So yeah, like the other thing technically, I work with my other, continuing commercial projects, but like I said in my letter, it's very, it's very much a part of what I'm trying to structure to make sure that there is that ongoing balance. It continues. It's continued for 15 years with Peace Development Fund, not just only contributing to the communication structures with a couple of the fiscally sponsored projects, but helping to sit in on communication Zooms and everything with the larger group of 40 plus sponsored projects and everything. So in the same way that relationship continues, I hope for a continuing relationship with whomever I join up with. That's the goal. And in terms of my own balance, like I said, after COVID and during COVID, I wanted to branch out and make sure that I had a couple of these commercial clients that I was able to, and that's fun, that's exciting, that's creative and everything. But my heart is in also making sure that I have those ongoing relationships that I'm able to contribute to and draw from, but also kind of help to facilitate. Yeah, that's the goal, not just one and done, but to make sure that the relationships are ongoing, just like with Peace Development Fund. And frankly, with a couple of the different commercial clients that I'm continuing to work with, I'm proud of those strong relationships, and yeah, I look forward to building it hopefully with you guys.
Okay.
Darian, do you think that you could maybe describe for Chris what the procedure is usually for the months that we are doing the eNews? You're a little closer to that than I am.
Well, it's pretty basic. I don't think it holds any surprises. The eNews editor circulates information about the upcoming deadline several times in the course of the month, receives the materials, edits them, receives late submissions, gently encourages people to be on time, and passes on to the IT person the clean text in the form that the IT person wants it. IT person does all the design work, then the editor proofreads that. And part of what is passed on is not just the articles, but the specific intro lines for each article, which generally the ideal would be that they come from the beginning of the article, but not all articles work out that clearly that way.
Right, right,
and photographs.
Oh, that's right. Photographs or other illustrations are part of each article, as you've probably seen. And we do, that is an important part of the editor gets to locate illustrations if we don't have photographs from the WILPF members, because we're getting very careful about copyrighted material and making sure we have Shutterstock is the place where we go to get our illustrations and we pay them for them.
Okay, good, good. Good, yeah. Good.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, yeah, kind of utilizing finding those kinds of materials, and yeah, that's good. Putting a kind of a creative and keen eye on those. That's fun.
Oh, good. Ellen, you have a final question, and
Yeah,
then we have.
when could you start?
I could start. I could start soon. Again, I'm working with other. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I got a. I mean, I know we're not talking about starting tomorrow, but I got an email this week that I do submissions with the agency editing reviews of sponsored content for primarily. I mean, I do different clients, but this is through the Turkish creative agency in Istanbul, Dukan. The primary client, which we're now on a 10 article, 10-week submission schedule, is the Go Turkey campaign, which is the Turkish ministry's travel campaign. So I'm editing the sponsored content published in United States publications primarily. So it's New York Times Magazine yeah. Anyway, that's not what you asked. Those are weekly. That's an article a week right now. It'll probably once we're done with the 10-week cycle, that'll be done. But it's by no means in any kind of conflict with this. And I'm always talking to other potential clients. But yeah, I'm very communicative of yeah, my responsibilities to other clients.
About how many hours a month do you feel like you have available to you for branching out into this?
I'm probably right now in a quarter or half-time commitment. So I think with what the original posting had listed, I think we're well within that time frame. Yeah, but was it 15 to 20 hours per month or something? Am I?
Something like that. And of course, it depends on the editor and their and so forth, but somewhere in that.
So we're looking at 5 hours a week. Oh yeah, we're well within that. So if I'm working at a quarter to half time, that's a 5 to or I'm sorry, a 10 to 20 hour. Is that right? Yeah, commitment each week. So yeah, I mean that's yeah, we're well within that.
As I understand it, Darian, the payment is per issue, not per hour.
Right. And of course, the time is mostly concentrated within a few days in terms of getting the submissions and getting them to the IT person and proofing them. And then it's just a little bit in between times.
Right. And one of the things about contracting, that I've become used to is kind of writing my own schedule to make sure that I'm maximizing those deadline windows. For instance, with Dukan, with the Turkish agency again, although she had her meeting in Dubai last week, but I'm set up to be a senior editor for overall review of their quarterly publications. So again, being published quarterly, and I've already done some of those mock drafts, and it really is something that I can take care of an issue in 5 overall work days, let's say spread over the course of of 2 weeks or even a month. So in other words, I can lay out my schedule in a way to where there are no conflicts, even on that, even if that quarter somehow overlaps with one of the month due dates and working with IT and everything, I can, yeah, it's that kind of consulting juggle, that contract juggle is something I'm used to and can navigate pretty well.
And that is an important part of independent contracting. They can
Yeah.
sneak up on you. Well,
Yeah. I mean, that's something that I feel, and also again on the communication part of, I'm really good. I'm very schedule oriented, so I'm in fact working with all of the clients and everything. I think that's part of what I also bring is like I tend to be the most, have the most fidelity for schedule kind of out of everyone. And again, part of it is cultural as well and everything, but a lot of times I'm helping to frame that and everything. So yeah, that doesn't that's I don't find that daunting. Again, like I said about the kind of relationship building, it would be a matter of really kind of getting kind of an assessment and an understanding of what the landscape is about, but then coming into it and providing the kind of necessary structure to be able to kind of get this information done and get it back to IT and make sure all that. Yeah, like I tend to be pretty engineer minded as far as that goes. So that's what I do.
I bet they value that.
Yeah,
So
they get it whether they want it or not. They get organization. Some people want it more than others.
indeed. So this is your chance. Any questions you wanted to ask us?
As far as the submissions go, are you guys again? There I go with my guys, with my New York. Use guys. Are you guys? What's it all about?
She and I are Californians, so we're used to that. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely. Um, um, are are the same people making the same submissions? Are there certain contributors that are more keen and more kind of enthusiastic about it that you're working with, and sometimes having to try to either juggle or shy away from, or add other voices to, or whether like who are the submissions coming from? And I know it sounds like you guys want to make sure that those are branching out, but are there contributors that are
We have
contributing?
some that are steady, like, for
Yeah,
example, the Disarm Committee, Cheryl Spencer is very good about submitting. We, there's a limit to how many articles we normally do, and so sometimes there are more articles submitted than there's space for, and if it's important, it may be, but not urgent, then it may be put off to the next
right.
one. Darian, do you have anything to add to that?
I think you've pretty well covered it, that there are a few regulars, and we haven't had a problem in recent issues with too many submissions. It's more that we're trying to encourage branches especially to submit, and
Great.
they're less likely, but also the issue
Right.
committee.
Do you think that those that are less likely that you would like to see those contributions from, do you think that they would be open to a kind of new kind of relationship, helping them to kind of brainstorm and maybe kind of work past anything that they might find daunting on that, to kind of help partner with them to get some of those contributions? Do you think they'd be open to that, or it's just?
It's going to be variable.
Yeah.
Ellen,
Yeah.
want to comment?
So different branches have different strengths. Some of them they basically hold events and have meetings, but they're not particularly outspoken. Others are very active, such as in California, there are a number of very strong branches. So it just depends. And I am signed up to the branch in the triangle branch in North Carolina. I live in the mountains of North Carolina and I'm an at-large member, but I receive messages from them and I notice that they have a lot going on, but I never see anything from them in the eNews. And so a branch like that, it would be good to reach out to. So
Do you think that there is an opening for some of those that aren't necessarily like keen or instinctive on those kinds of contributions? Do you think there's a way to maybe institute some kind of 5 question check-in to maybe just submit something to them where they'd be able to kind of sit and answer some things, and then it would just be a matter of editing down and streamlining, creating flow from those answers. A lot of times people are more open to being kind of interviewed and to answering and talking about what they do rather than kind of generating that performance or production on their own.
that
Do you
would be
think
a
that
good
some of
way
those?
for you to reach out and get to know what's going on and knowing people. That would be a
Yeah,
good way to do it.
I've done tons of interviews. I've done, particularly in the nonprofit sphere. Yeah, I've done just lots and lots of interviews on, including just submissions of questions and everything. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that,
And again, the interview, in terms of the publication of an interview, it really comes down to editing.
right.
That's not even writing. That's really writing 5 or however many questions and then getting to work to edit it down and make sure that it's what they're saying, but also that it's well structured and flows well.
Right, right. And I think not only branches, but some of our issue committees would do well to respond to something like that because some are much quieter than others.
Mm-hmm.
What sorts of questions would you ask?
Well, if you're saying that they're doing events, like that's why it jumped to mind is I would want to, and particularly if they're known for events or known for different kinds of contributions like that, I would want to uh, get an update on maybe one particular event, but their framework and strategy for this kind of community involvement. Yeah, ongoing. Maybe one to cover a bit of that history. Yeah, of course, one toward the end to cover what they're looking ahead to next or whatever. Yeah, just some kind of arc structure of that's built around maybe something that they just worked through some big event or some kind of notable happening that things could be kind of framed around.
They also, I
That,
think, have some very special people who are getting old. It'd be good to have stories about the people.
Absolutely. And like I said earlier, in my kind of personal commitment to making sure that generations and voices are in a kind of, this kind of conversation together, I think that would be terrific to maybe not just cover a chapter and their events, but a particular a personality that's been instrumental maybe for a number of years, maybe decades for that particular chapter. This would be a great kind of yeah, I think that would be wonderful.
Have one a month,
Kind of a, yeah,
different one every month.
yeah, and those particular groups that aren't that you'd like to see more contribution. Yeah, again, that would be a kind of way, maybe with one of their kind of generational kind of contributors to kind of be able to kind of do that sort of profile, and then also be able to kind of reintroduce the chapter itself and what it's all about, particularly with an introduction of what they do, what they're acclaimed for, and how that can be showcased with a particular elder statesperson that's been with that group and a voice of that group for a number of years. I think that would be a very fruitful area to kind of explore.
I've been talking with a couple of people for several years about doing oral histories, and we are into the idea and to do it on Zoom so that we have a video of it. And I suspect that kind of an interview would be a good way to do that.
Absolutely. So
Something
you could even edit you could edit print a print article publication interview off of the transcript of, so you can do both. You don't have to
Right.
necessarily sit for these different kinds of media. You could actually do one, and or I could do one, and kind of oversee that. Yeah, it was funny. Even when I was with in Dubai with Telecom Review, that tech publication a couple years ago for their annual conference, which again is coming up here in a couple of weeks, they pulled me in. I was sleep deprived. I hadn't slept off the flight, and they were like, "Can you do one of these interviews with one of the tech contributors?" So yeah, like I actually enjoy structuring those. Yeah. I think that's a great idea to, yeah, but whether it be in print or whether it be something recorded off Zoom, I think that's
Or both.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Or both, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we do a lot of linking in the articles to prior eNews articles, to videos we have, to whatever we may web.
Right.
You might want to explore the WILPF US YouTube channel. It's at WILPF US Today.
Yeah.
Dig deep because there's a lot there. Just open up the playlists and look
I
at.
did, yeah, I did watch a couple of contributions. Actually, I was introduced. I mean, it's wonderful meeting you guys in Zoom person here, but I actually watched a couple of the longer form Zooms that both of you participated in. Yeah, just to kind of know who I was meeting with today, but also get a sense of kind of things, going back and forth and just the discussions and everything. I also saw a lot of content, including about Gaza. And I went to both pages. I went to international and I went to US, and I kind of got a sense of. Again, I didn't watch a lot of them, but I just got an idea of what's been produced, and kind of, yeah. There's certainly a lot there that I would want to dive into. But yeah, absolutely. And yes, I've done that before. So I think I put in my letter the interview and publication I had done with former Amnesty International Director Jack Healy, and we did a lot of cross-purposing. I got in touch with musician Sting's PR team, and we were able to get an interview a very short interview he had done, kind of talking about Jack and his contributions to performing arts and human rights and everything. So yeah, I've done that before, where there's kind of the cross linking and cross promotion of the different channels and everything.
And as you say, there's so much content available on the web these days. The challenge is to figure out what is it one wants to highlight and how to connect people to things. So your SEO experience will be something useful, certainly.
Yeah, it's but again, bringing sort of the legacy organizations like Wolf and making sure that is a continuation of a conversation moving into this new century and everything. So yeah, it's not jettisoning one and kind of moving to the other. It's really kind of building the framework to connect the two.
Well, any other questions you have for us?
Is there a style guide?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. As long as it's reasonable, good usage in whatever style you prefer to use, that's probably fine. We do dates American style. That's about it. But
yeah, I saw that kind of stuff. Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the things. And then it said, I think, in the listing about potential, again, way too soon to talk about it, but potential other project assignments outside of the eNews. What types of those potential projects down the road could those include?
well, we haven't done any of those in quite a while, but it would be
Okay.
something like, I'm trying to remember what the last thing was that we did, but it would be something like if someone is working on a brochure or an informative piece on a topic, to have you look it over and improve it. So it might be
Yeah.
about an alternative economics or a position paper on the Middle East, or it's hard to know.
Yeah, yeah, good. Yeah, no, I was just curious because it was kind of open-ended,
Right.
but yeah, no, those are really, again, I think that, my questions all tend to be, probably more technical about the introduction to the IT person, that schedule. It sounds like, there's a framework of a kind of schedule that you're used to, and I would want to get a sense of that. Again, because I'm so kind of organized and schedule oriented, I can't imagine anything being too daunting or anything like that. I would just personally want to understand that framework as soon as possible. But that's my own. When I say as soon as possible, I mean experience it. I don't mean demand that of you. I mean kind of get in and get my feet wet and get going and kind of learn what that schedule's about and what that energy and that kind of that timeline is about.
All sensible questions. Well, anything else, Ellen?
Well, I'm just pondering ways to do outreach to get more people involved in in doing stories for eNews, and we've got a couple of places where it might be possible. The program committee call, and one of the Jane Addams branch calls. Jane Addams branch is what they call the online communication for people who don't have branches, people like me who are living in a place where there aren't other people who are getting together. And there's a monthly call where Diane Blay is the Jane Addams branch chair, and she's been doing a really good job of having people come in and talk, and that might be a good time. It's on
Yeah.
Wednesday nights. Unfortunately, it's at night. It's at 8 p.m., which would be difficult for you.
Yeah, again, at
But the
least to
program
start,
calls,
but
I think, are a little earlier, huh? I'm sorry.
and where is she? Is she on the East Coast?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and the program calls, those are the program committee chairs, and that would be a good way for you to be introduced to those folks so that they would know that you were going to be doing the eNews, and you can tell them whatever it is that you think, or ask them what they think and so forth. Tell them.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I should add to this is like working in the human rights field, I've been on several of these, both in the United States and over here and in the Middle East, connecting these different time zones from 2 in the morning, all the way out to California, including some in South America, which doesn't really vary off of like Central or East Coast time, but the point being is that yeah, we've constructed these a lot where sun's coming up on one end and it's the middle of the morning on another end, and yeah, so been there, done that.
Well, it sounds like you're flexible. I was just going to say potentially we could even have a quick Zoom recording where you did your self-introduction, and then we could play that on
That's
the
true,
Zoom
we could do that.
meeting.
Yeah, but then he wouldn't have the opportunity to meet the people.
Right.
Right.
But again, if it's that introductory kind of thing, I think there's probably a way to work it out, even if it's a weird kind of one-off of me. Wait, like say 8 o'clock would be 2 in the morning. Hey, it's a late. Is that an early morning or is that a late night? Who knows? But yeah, like if there are these kinds of introductions, there are I think ways of thinking about it in terms of one-offs, and maybe even as an early. We've all been a part of those where somebody contributes an introduction and then hello, and please email me with anything that you have, and I'll say goodbye to you for now or whatever. But there are ways of doing that to kind of begin the conversation and the introduction, and still have it put forth that this will be ongoing, and that I'll be available for any response. And I look forward to it. I look forward to those conversations.
Just earlier in the day.
Yeah.
Oh, we've kept you much longer than we had any right to. I've enjoyed this chance to hear about your work and to interview. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you both. I'm glad that we were able to find our time and our bounce to spam, and actually make the arrangement and meet. It's been also really nice getting to know more about the organization as I've been kind of researching these last couple of days. So yeah, the work you guys do is really great. The history is really great. Kind of maintaining that. I think it's a real it's a commitment to this kind of structure, and I really like that there's this kind of faith in just this kind of organizational structure and bylaws and fortitude, and kind of moving forward with that. I think it's a really fruitful way of making that connection. Yeah, I love it.
It's a long-term project.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
But one that deserves to go on, and deserves to have that story continue to be told, but also to make those connections to a story that's been going on for 110 years.
yeah, we move glacially. So I'm afraid it will likely be 2 to 3 weeks before we have a decision. And I know that
Okay.
is a little nerve-wracking. I apologize in advance.
Again, I'm having conversations, and I'm working with my clients that are already, this is the world we live in. So, in all honesty, 2 or 3 weeks to be back in touch, and that's a great time frame. I think that sounds great. By the way, it's probably going to happen to me. It might happen to you that we get off. I fall asleep. I wake up in the middle of the night, and I'm like, oh, I forgot to ask them about this or whatever. You guys might want to know some more information about me. Please don't hesitate to email me back, with anything that you have, and I'll certainly respond. Yeah, and I'll do the same if I forgot something, or if or if something in my schedule works out to where there's something that I'll let you guys know. I can't imagine, but yeah, if we've missed anything, please don't hesitate to reach back out. I'm always around, and I'll even check my spam folder. I promise.
All right. Very good. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you both for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Well, likewise. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
So